You'd mentioned as well the spirit releasement kind of aspect to that. And a past life therapist may find out that, oh, I'm not talking to councils or angels, Archangel Michael. Then we may find out, well, what other spirits are here? But there's an entity that comes, but then very quickly goes. They're not earthbound if they come in a week or two after dying, but then very quickly go. Have you had experiences where you found spirits that are earthbound, that they then attach to somebody for, weeks, months, years after their passing,
Yeah.
and then you have to move them on? Have you experienced that kind of thing in your practice?
I've experienced both. I've experienced it with my own self. I've also experienced it with people coming to me. It's interesting. They'll come for either past life regression or hypnotherapy. And I do believe it's their higher self bringing them to me because they don't even know there's an attachment, and it comes up kind of an organic way. And to me, I've never had a real tough one.
Okay.
And maybe because I feel comfortable with that, my own attachment, and let me tell you, having a spirit attachment does not feel good at all. I did, my sister-in-law, after her mother passed, asked me for a reading. And I said, okay. And her mother came through, and then I got this other name, and it was her grandmother. Apparently, her grandmother had been earthbound for many years, refused to go. She had people from Spirit that came, and she said, I don't know them. I'm not going with them. She was a very tough woman. But because I had this reading and she then realized, okay, I'm going to attach to her because I kind of called her in, I guess, not even realizing it. And for the next, it was probably almost 2 weeks or maybe at least a week. It was really awful. It feels like anxiety. It feels like you're not always in your body. You feel kind of, like out there. I felt nauseous, didn't know what it was, but thank goodness had many people around me who all put the pieces together of the puzzle, and another medium who was able to talk to her. She didn't know she was dead. She looked down and she had no body. She had gone to her old house. The house had been condemned, and she was just wandering around and kind of like not real happy. So she clinged on to me, and I this is why I think this is so important. I love that you're doing a lot of spirit releasement. If I was not in this world of the spiritual world that we know, that we're familiar with, I would have gone to every doctor, every therapist, would probably be on a lot of medication and still not understood or been able to resolve what it really was. But my own brother, who's not a medium, but had a dream about it. I mean, we're talking, all these forces were working with me, and we understood it was her. I actually one day thought, well, let me do this. I'll get rid of her. I went into my back office, and this is a great story because, again, looking for the validation. I want to know that this is real, that this happened. I live in a rancher. My husband was working for the NFL. He's retired. So I'm saying that only because it's an unusual word that would come up in a phone conversation with work. I went in, I sat down, and I brought in Archangel Michael, and I said, she wasn't going willingly. And I said, you need to go. And I had this visual in my mind of literally two angels had her under her arms like this and were carrying her away. And at that moment, I felt, oh my gosh, I'm back. I feel so much better. I'm myself again. And I remembered to ask for a sign. And as I was opening the window, kind of for air, my husband was on his cell phone. He was walking by, and I said to myself in my mind, I want to hear the word peace, either a peace sign, the word peace, or something in the next hour, because I need to know that that really happened. And at that moment, he walked by and said, in the middle of a conversation, yeah, that guy's really at peace with himself, and kept walking. And I went, thank you. That was very quick. And that was my experience having an attached spirit to myself. So I know what it feels like. And I was happy that I was able to do it, and
Right.
literally bringing in angels and saying, you've got to go. You
Yeah.
can't be here.
She was an earthbound spirit, but this is the distinction I'd make between someone who died very recently within a couple of weeks and someone who's been there for years. So at that time, you were also doing channeling or a little bit of medium stuff with that one. Is that just a recap?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
And
so
she came in for a visit. She came in
yeah.
to the
But
two of
then
them.
but then she stuck around. So this is one thing I
She
will say
stuck
to
around.
people who do channeling or mediumship work. And I actually, so I teach spirit releasement therapy. I've got courses online. and I do it as a mentoring thing as well. And a lot of, in fact, most of the students or people that take it are mediums, healers, therapists, doing channeling in one way or another. If you work with Earthbounds enough, sooner or later they'll think it's a good idea to hang on to you, and then you probably want to know how to deal with them. And there are a lot of ways you can deal with it. A lot of times they will go pretty easily, but sometimes they need a little bit of conversation and persuasion, but also really enlightening. And so I know you can have angels come and take them away. That's also not going to work with every type of being, particularly dark force entities or some earthbounds. There's some extra steps that I teach that are useful. And particularly, once again, it's also not just telling them, you're in the wrong, you need to go, we're going to drag you out. Part of it can be, let me ask some questions. When did you pass away? Who came and got you? If you were to look up and see your spirit guide. And so then they can get in touch with their spirit guide or your soul group members, your loved ones. So your sister, your mother, your aunt. And what do they say to you? And then they'll say, hey, you need to come. And so when they hear it from them, they're like, oh, it's her idea to leave. And that's another thing as well. I want confirmation that these ones have taken her away. Earthbounds can be a bit tricky and they can pretend to go and then sort of hide and then sneak back a little bit. And so that's a really useful experience. And it's that difference between someone who's just passing by for a short time. So that's one of the consequences. If you think, oh, I had this amazing experience and I talked to an Earthbound, the week after she passed, and I think I'll talk to her again, a month later, then the nausea, the I don't want this anymore can kick in. And that's where spirit releasement can be pretty helpful.